Hello, my name is Jessamay Khalilap, and I'm a coordinator of the pre-pharmacy program. Our panelists come from many different institutions and around the nation, and I thank them for coming today. Thank you to all the attendees for coming to our second admissions panel, and we'll start by having our panelists introduce their name, position, and institution, starting with Mr. Dean.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? My name is Peter Dean. I'm from the USC School of Pharmacy. I'm the recruitment coordinator of the school, and it's great to be here. It's great.
Hi there, I'm Carol Jones from Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas, and I serve as the Director of Admissions.
Good morning. My name is Doug Meyer, and I'm from Pacific University School of Pharmacy in Portland, Oregon. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs as well as Assistant Faculty.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcia Parker. I'm from the Keck Graduate Institute School of Pharmacy. I'm the Director of Admissions, and we are located in Southern California, about 35 miles east of LA in the city of Claremont.
Good morning, and my name is Charles Woosley. I'm Director of Recruitment with Auburn University, Harrison School of Pharmacy, and that's in Auburn, Alabama.
Okay, welcome panelists and attendees. Our first question goes towards Mr. Dean, and it will be open to all the panelists. What is your school's mission statement?
It's leading our mission statement by our dean is leading the pharmacy schools in practice and innovation and creativity and expanding the scope of pharmacy. It's pretty much, it's genetically in our code, so to speak. We have a genetic code. In 1950, we started the first Pharm.D program in the nation. Since then, we've been leading. We were the first, and I believe in 1968, that had our first clinical clerkships and pharmacy program. It's really, really leading. We're in a really strong role of leadership in the country, and even in California, for instance, they passed a law right now that gives the pharmacy a really greater scope in the expansion of the pharmacist as a healthcare provider. And you can read up on that. Governor Brown has signed a bill, and it's law. So it's great.
Mrs. Jones?
Okay, we're a faith-based school, and so I'm just going to read our mission statement so I can say it succinctly. Harding University College of Pharmacy seeks to graduate pharmacists who accept the responsibility of improving the spiritual and physical wellness of the world by providing patient-centered care that ensures optimal medication therapy outcomes delivered through the highest standards of Christian service.
I'll just say a couple of words from our mission statement that I think really exemplify what we're all about at Pacific. And those would be patient-centered care, learner-centered environment, innovation, and collaborative. We teach differently at Pacific because of the structure of our program, but we always keep the patient and the learner at the top of what we're doing.
So at the KGI School of Pharmacy, our mission is to train innovative pharmacists who are not only interested in working in the traditional areas of pharmacy, so of course community and health system environments, but also who are interested in being exposed to the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industry. We want our students to be comfortable working in interprofessional environments, be comfortable with technology, and also really be interested in patient-centered care as well.
At Auburn University, just to put it very succinctly, we revolve around student-centered learning, modeled after a problem-based learning process. And we do that through a system of mentoring the students through 4 years. And our goal then is to achieve a student that is professional and a student that is compassionate about their patient.
Okay, thank you, panelists. For this next question, we will start again with Mr. Woosley. After reading hundreds of personal statements, what advice would you give to applicants about their writing other than correct grammar and having others revise their papers?
Why do you want to be a pharmacist? It's real simple. You're going to get that on the interview, so you need to have this one nailed down. And it needs to be personal. Certainly by now we all know not to cut and paste. I think that's probably elementary to this group, but believe it or not, we see that every year. But make it your own. That's what we're interested in at Auburn. What has led you to a career in pharmacy, and why do you want to pursue that career? And then give us a reason or reasons that have exemplified, or that as an example of working or job shadowing that has confirmed that lifelong passion of becoming a pharmacist.
Ms. Parker, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. So in terms of your personal statement, I would suggest also looking into the mission of the school. We all kind of went over that briefly, but look at what that school individually is about, and then think about your own goals as a pharmacist and see if those two match up, and then try to articulate that in your personal statement.
I would agree, and just add, we all know that you're very interested in the sciences, and we know that you're interested in helping people. But there's lots of health professions out there where you can use your science background and you can help people. So, as Charles said, why do you really want to be a pharmacist? And make it a personal account. And that's very helpful.
I think after reading lots of these, what I really look for is authenticity. I want to make it real and make it good, but I want it to be yours. I need to hear from you what it is that pushes you to become a pharmacist. Perhaps it was a sick grandmother that you helped care for through her wellness. If that's the case, that's fine to put that in there, but we don't need every detail about your grandmother's illness now. So please be professional in how you state that. Do keep your PharmCast application as more generic as why you want to be a pharmacist. When you write your supplemental essay, that's where you can really be school-specific and as you referred to, research that school and tell you why you want to be at that school.
Mr. Dean?
Be specific and unique about your story, about why you would be a good fit. You don't want to write why someone else told you why, you should become a pharmacist. This needs to be personal and really unique. On my notes, also describe the qualities of why you would become and why you would be an effective communicator as well. That's important to us. And the third point, which is, I think, often most overlooked, do not describe bench lab research projects unless it was related to pharmaceutical development. This points in the direction of a PhD pharmacology, not pharmacy practice. So this is about interviewing. That comes up in interviews as well, and also in the personal statements and essays.
All right, thank you. For our next question, we will start with Mr. Dean. For your school's criteria, what is the most important factor when looking at pharmacy school applications?
There's not one really single factor, in applications. Preliminary, before we see you, because we do interview you, our interview, by the way, is 20-25 minutes in length. But there's no really single factor, but again, preliminarily, what we're looking at is, first of all, your GPA, and that's, we'll probably talk about that as well, but overall GPA, and also math and science prerequisite GPA, that's number one. Number two, 3 letters of recommendation. One must be from a professor, second, pharmacist, and third, an advisor. So there's three letters of recommendation. The third is a resume. No preferred format, chronological is fine. There's ways to write resumes effectively. I'm sure you can find that. And the fourth is your personal statements and essays. So before we see you, those are those are the areas that we're specifically looking at. So there's not one really single factor in which one weighs more than the other. But all these things come together, in making a decision for an interview, because we haven't seen you yet.
Mrs. Jones would like to add anything?
Okay. I would just say that fundamentally we're looking for someone who has the ability to succeed academically, and you've got to pass that baseline before you can then come in for that interview. And we look for those most important qualities, which are communication skills and leadership skills and service, desire to serve others. But when I'm just reading the application, I'm looking for, can this person do it academically? So we're going to go back to your GPA and PCAT scores for those of us who use PCAT. There's no amount of leadership that can compensate for that. But I would say on your application, look for something to put on there that does set you apart, that makes you unique. That may be foreign travel. That may be some leadership role that you've served in. Those are the kinds of things that I look for when I read. When everyone's PCAT and GPA is at this level and above, then we're looking for those unique things that set students apart.
And just to that, I would add communication, and not only communication in your application, but every contact that you have with us at the school is a communication point. So how well you talk to someone on the phone when you're calling with a question. If you're less than professional with someone on the phone, that's going to follow you on your application. So remember, at all points, you're basically in the application process. So communication and professionalism at all times is really important.
I would add that, of course, we all have our minimum requirements posted on our website, and you want to definitely exceed that. But I know that we're looking for people who strive for excellence. And if you think about what, at the end of the day, you're wanting to be a pharmacist, and as a patient, we want our pharmacists to not settle for less when it comes to working with us. We want our pharmacists to be really concerned about making sure that we are healthy. So that reflects in your GPA, that reflects in whether you've gone the extra mile to try to expose yourself to pharmacy. That does definitely reflect in the way that you carry yourself and that you communicate. So just striving for excellence as a whole, I think, will really reflect in your application.
From our perspective, we're a holistic admission school and certainly can only echo GPA. We do require PCAT. And then we come to that list that I call the application. And from my perspective, what I'm looking for very succinctly, are these criteria. Number one, have you job shadowed and or worked as a technician? We have no specific minimum number of hours. Some schools do. That's up to you to find that out and make certain you've covered your bases there. But what we want to see there has, as I said earlier, has this confirmed that you do want to pursue this profession? What organizations have you been a part? But more importantly, what organizational responsibilities have you had? Much rather see one or two organizational responsibilities than a list of 5 or 6 different organizations of which you are a member. You know, and I know, it just takes a few dollars and you can join a lot of organizations on campus. Number 3, what volunteer work have you done? This could either be a part of an organization or it could be that personal passion in your life. From our perspective, we will accept either. It doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to patient care, and that could be Habitat for Humanity to any of the other great works that are out there. But we want to see that you're willing to give up your time, for something else. And then already has been mentioned, the references. The key word there is favorable reference. Keyword, favorable. Remember that one. That's what we want to see. And yes, I have seen some that were not favorable, for a student. So those are the things we're looking for. And I just want to echo this, guys. We're going to invite you for an interview. We take you from a big pool of, in our case, 600 to 700 students, down to a smaller pool of only 200 that we interview, and we'll talk about that later. So before we have literally seen you and gotten to know you, we're making decisions on those criteria, just as the other schools have identified.
Thank you, Mr. Woosley. Other than those criteria, what are some things that make an applicant stand out? And if you have any examples, would you please state them? Starting from Mr. Woosley again.
Quite honestly, I look at character. I'm a pharmacist. To me, that's just as important in our admitting you, to pharmacy school, and in my case, to my career, my profession, is your character. At the end of your interview, trust me, I'm going to ask you, why are you different? And you need to be able to identify that character trait that is different from hardworking and determined. Quite honestly, if you didn't have those 2 character traits, we wouldn't be interviewing you. So be able not only to say, this is my character strength, but also be able to identify how you have exemplified that character trait. So that is probably the second thing that we're going to be looking for after those other three, is the character, the strength of your character as we admit you or defer you.
And for KGI, I mean, definitely the GPA, the pharmacy shadowing experience, those two are important. But we're definitely interested in, innovative leaders who are aware of the changes that are going on in healthcare and who want to be at the forefront of that. And I mean, all of us, we go and we speak at the, pre-pharmacy clubs, or we have our visitation days. And if you would really take advantage of those and to learn more about the specific schools you're applying for, to see if what we're about is what you're about as well.
Along with the excellent letters of reference, and that is critical, we have a very strong group and team component in our curriculum, so we look for that in our application process. How well have you worked in groups in the past? Are you adaptable to assuming different roles in groups? Can you work also independently, however? So we're looking for someone who has those abilities. As pharmacy, it's a very much interprofessional career, so we start that in school and expect that trait throughout the program.
And I would just come back to professionalism, communication skills, and leadership. Those are the three things. And if you can demonstrate that at your interview, and you would do this by telling situation stories. Here's where I did this. Here are situations where I demonstrated these abilities. Well, if you can sell those three things at your interview, that's going to go a long way.
Mr. Dean?
Of course, having a strong GPA is good, but it's not everything. You can walk in with a 4.0 in an interview and blow it. So we think when you're interviewed, the principles of interviewing are the same, regardless if you're going for a job in graduate school. So it's a different setting, of course. But there's two main things I want you guys to think about categorically. One is experience and leadership. Experience exposes you to the profession. We want to make sure that you've been exposed to healthcare, something you've stepped in the hospital, you volunteer. There's lots of creative ways to do that. I know it's tough right now for students, trying to get, experience, but there's creative ways. If you're lacking anything, please, talk to me or email me, and we'll talk about that, because you can get experience. But you can have experience. You can be a professor here at any university, right? But your heart's not here. And so experience gives you the exposure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your heart's there, right? There's a lot of people that go to a job and not happy. We want to identify and select people that, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to, yes, I'm going to go to work, or I'm going to go to school. There's its passion, and that brings us to leadership. Leadership, to me, is what my Dr. Mosley was saying, is character. It really is character, and that one of the character qualities that the traits that we look for is initiative. We're a school that are attracted to leaders. Leaders are attracted to us. And initiative, to me, is identifying a need in my immediate surrounding or my community before I'm asked to do it. And it's passion. It's contagious. We want you to interview. We want you to, smile, and your face has got to light up. Your eyes got to light up. When we say, about pharmacy, you got to be passionate. We've interviewed people who've had the experience but have not had the passion. We have not admitted them. And it's not that the interview is complicated or difficult or anything. It's just that it's there. So I would say something that would really stand out to answer that question would be the experience, right? But also the leadership and the character that you're developing now as a student will be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. This next question is in regards to your schools. Starting from Mr. Dean, are there any unique characteristics in the school's curriculum?
We own, we're a health science campus. We're the only university in the nation that owns privately, our hospitals and, pharmacies. And so we're on a health science campus. And that's just in itself is great exposure. We do have, and many schools do, it's what you call interprofessional education programs. And there's IPE sessions every year in pharmacy and medicine, OT, occupational therapy, which is PT, and physician assistant as well. So not only that, but you're also in a clinic with students in the schools, and you see patients together while being supervised by the school faculty. And that happens every year. It's not in the summertime. It's right from your very first year. For example, in the fall, you're already in the hospital in the afternoons. You have lectures in the morning, and in the afternoon you're in the hospital. It's your very first year. We do that every year, and we don't. Although of course we do have a block system that you can tentatively deliver information that way, but it is spread out, so it's not something that's going to overwhelm you. But for example, we have a travel clinic, pharmacy clinic. That is something that we've done, and it's been very successful. You can look that up on our website. But very much into practice into IPEs.
One thing that we offer is a combined degree with the Pharm.D and the M.B.A, and so you can, during the course of your education, some of the pharmacy courses, a couple of those will count towards your M.B.A. You've got 3 electives in the pharmacy school, so you can take M.B.A courses for those. So by the end of pharmacy school, you can have a whole string of letters after your name, if that's what you desire. And it's good as a pharmacist, if you are especially owning your own pharmacy, to know if you're making any money at your pharmacy. So it's good to be able to read those spreadsheets, and M.B.A will help you with that. And so we're going to allow you in that same amount of time to earn your M.B.A. The other thing is that with our curriculum, we're very, very intentional about coordination and sequencing of the curriculum. Your pharmacology is going to be taught in alignment with your pharmacotherapy. For example, if you're studying the cardiovascular system, in your pharmacology classes, within a week, you're going to be studying pharmacotherapy so that you're able to apply what you're learning. It just makes sense. Isn't it better to learn something and use it? And so we are very intentional about sequencing those courses. And I think it really has helped our students for retention of knowledge.
At Pacific, we are a 3-year program, so I would say that's very unique for our program. We are also a pass, no pass program. We do not have letter grades at Pacific. Your progression in the program is based on a competency that you obtain. You're given a chance to remediate if you don't pass. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our focus is on teams. So you'll have team projects, actually team exams as well. So very unique in that respect. And we also, as with the M.B.A, we have a dual MHA program that's available as well. So.
At KGI, our students are going to earn a Pharm.D, but in addition to that, you're actually going to get to have a certificate in one of 4 areas. So medication therapy outcomes, health information technology, healthcare operations management, and clinical and regulatory affairs, so that you'll be able to go to an employer and say, not only do I have a Pharm.D, but I also have kind of an expertise in one of these 4 areas. In addition to that, we have some really exciting approaches to our curriculum. We're going to be using flipping the classroom, which means that you basically kind of review your lectures at home, and then when you're in class, you actually get to work with the professor and have that person help you in person, along with your classmates. Our science courses are in more of a block fashion as well, so you don't have to kind of juggle science classes all at the same time. You'll do a science class for a few weeks, you'll be done with that, then you move on to your next science class. We have a lot of professional development in our program where we want you to kind of write your own mission and vision for yourself as a pharmacist. And then we're also going to have some experiential opportunities in the pharmaceutical industry where you get to go behind those doors and find out what that's all about, because if you've never kind of been exposed to it, then how do you know if you like it or not? So we're really excited about some of the unique characteristics of our program.
You know, at Auburn, as I said earlier, one of the things that we do is called problem-based student-centered learning. And that's really at the heart or the core of our curriculum. And the way we put that into place is the second week of school, as a P1, we break the class size of 125 to 15, vertically integrate it with P3s, P2s, and P1s, and assign you a real live patient in the community. You're going to have to see this patient, you know, within the next week, interview and assess not only their disease states, but also their drug therapy. Be prepared to speak to that patient's case in class the very next week with the other 14 students as well as 2 professors. The P2 is your mentor, and they will aid you in the interview process and the electronic medical record process. The P3 is your team leader, who also, each of these also have students, and they become your clinical leader for any clinical questions. It's the only class that we have at Auburn that is pass-fail, and the intent is that we want you to learn. All the other courses are letter grade. You know, coupled with these things is again, how we teach what we teach. And if there's one thing I can challenge you guys to do is just that. Find out how each of us, if you're interested in the schools here or other schools, you know, in California, Pacific Northwest, et cetera, find out the answer to that. How do we teach what we teach? Our model is disease-based. Students refer to it as DAD, simply drugs and diseases. For 2 years, 4 semesters, that's the model we're going to teach. You know, when I was in pharmacy school, it was pathology, pharmacology, physiology, pharmacokinetics, on and on and on. We're going to teach heart disease. We're going to teach kidney disease and overlay those elements on top of those diseases. And then the 3rd year, it's integrated. We go to only 8 students per class. It is, again, student-centered, problem-based learning. The student is the team leader of the class, and the other 7 students actually have assignments that they must bring in an application process that the professor is challenging the students to learn by asking them questions instead of lecturing. It's a 12-hour course, so it's pretty important that you do well. And then certainly the end is all rotations. I think that we're all very similar and have different ones that we could, you know, brag about, but we'll leave that for later. How's that?
Thank you, Mr. Woosley. And aside from academics, what is the characteristics of the student population at your school?
Oh, gee, guys, at Auburn, it's family. The undergraduate school, you know, is very noted for its family atmosphere that binds the students together. All I can tell you is in pharmacy school, it's just going to be intensified. You certainly are still going to be competitive, as we heard earlier this morning about the number of residency positions and the number of students applying for residencies. So competition is still a part of that. At the same time, you're going to be part of a family that wants to make certain that not only do you succeed, but that your fellow classmates are doing well. And we do that through, again, that small team environment.
Some of the, do you want me to speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say some of the characteristics of our school, in addition to the concentrations that I mentioned earlier, is that we are a member of the Claremont Colleges, and so basically there's 7 private institutions. There's 5 undergraduate and then 2 graduate, so we're one of the graduate institutions. And so you have access to all the services from those campuses as well. And you know, in terms of our curriculum, in addition to some of the things I mentioned earlier, we also want to address some of the other things that go into being an excellent pharmacist. So in addition to being really good at science and all of those courses, we want to make sure that your communication skills are, you know, up to par, talking to patients about how to take care of themselves, interviewing, diversity, things such as that. So definitely a lot of characteristics that I would say are unique for our school.
At Pacific University, we're also a modified block program. So in addition to having a pass, no pass, and a 3-year program, the majority of our courses are taught in a 2-week span. So you're taking cardiovascular 1 over a 2-week period, and then at that following Friday of the 2nd week, you're taking your exam for that. So you're basically having a very high-stakes exam every 2 weeks. So one of the characteristics, and it's important as you look at pharmacy schools to make sure that you're looking at what is a good fit for you, because not all pharmacy schools are the same, and it's important to find the one that is the best fit. So back to the characteristics, our students excel at being able to focus on one topic and be examined on that topic every 2 weeks. If you're a type of student who needs to listen to the lectures, rewrite your notes 3 times, it may not be a good fit because things move very, very quickly in our program. So that's one characteristic is students are able to have that ability, or they adapt to that ability to be able to focus and do a program that has a modified block. Also, I would say we're a very diverse student population. We have students from all over the Pacific Northwest as well as California. So we have a great pool of diverse students who really bond together. Because it's a 3-year program, it's very, very tight. We don't have the grading. We have pass, no pass, so there's really a less competitive environment than you might see because students aren't fighting other students for grades.
If I had to sum up a characteristic of our students in just one word, I would say that word is service. And that's observed by, it's intentional, but it's also been observed by those outside of our college. You're going to have lots of opportunities to do medical mission trips. You're going to be able to do service projects, work at charitable clinics. And I think when it comes down to it in just one word, it is service. It's using our knowledge, skills, and abilities in a way to make a difference in the lives of others. My goodness, that's fulfilling work. And so I think that's the quality in our students that I see. If you have a heart for service, we may be a good fit for you.
I would say the two greatest characteristics is one is our student organizations win every year national first place awards and also regional awards for first place. I've stopped counting. I don't know if we have 18 organizations, but we are more than that, but in our school, growing. In that's just an awesome, our students are involved, very much involved in the community. In immediate community as well, where they learn a lot of during like health fairs, for example, in hospitals, like we were saying earlier. The second characteristic, which I believe is probably our greatest asset and what I would say of our school, USC School of Pharmacy, and our differentiator is that we have a very, very strong alumni network. So half of the pharmacists in California, for example, from USC School of Pharmacy. We're known from all the graduate schools, whether you're M.B.A. or getting your law degree, we're known as the Trojan family. And the Trojan family is very supportive. We have alumni, we have a lot of dinners and banquets and that happen continuously, and get-togethers and connects and things that alumni come to. So our students are always in communication and contact with our alumni. It's a great opportunity. I think this is probably the greatest asset that we have the ability when you graduate to take you to the top. And say to sum it and wrap it all up, I think this is our greatest differentiator asset, is that we have the ability to take you to the top after you graduate because of the network and the availability of alumni. There's just about every career path you can think of in pharmacy. We have a mentor that's there. And I could tell you so many stories. I'm in contact with them of that happening. So that while you're going to school, you're being exposed already to the career paths, you know, not only from our professors, but also our alumni as well that are out there.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Also on the thoughts of many students, what is the cost of attending pharmacy school, and are there any financial aid or scholarships available for your school?
Yes, we do have, beginning my notes are, I've got my notes here. I got to be specific and accurate with numbers because it's financial aid. But our tuition per semester is $23,431. Fall and spring tuition only is $46,862. The total cost, including room and board, for 1 year is $76,072. Okay, that is subject to change. Okay. And we do have departmental scholarships, everything ranging from a couple of $1,000s all the way to full tuition. Because our alumni base is so large, we have a lot of donors, we have a lot of money coming in. Our president, Nikias, has I think a $5-6 billion fundraising for the school, and it's happening. And we just acquired a hospital in Verdugo Hills that's also going to be an extension of one more place where you can get experience from. And so we're growing, and the scholarships are there. They're very available. We have, I'm not directly in financial aid, but you can come up to me and afterwards, and I can get all your questions answered regarding that. But as far as looking at the money is concerned, not one alumni that I've spoken with, when they all look back in their time at school, it's totally worth it, particularly because we have, and I'm talking about those that have dual degrees, that have M.B.As and in public health and regulatory science and many other degrees that we offer. So it's very achievable.
All righty. Well, our tuition is $33,186 per year. I didn't put it in a semester, so you divide by 2. You're going to be a great pharmacist. You've got to be able to divide. And then cost of living is going to vary from state to state. The good thing about Arkansas is it's pretty cheap to live there, so that's usually a very good thing. Here's my motherly advice for you today, and that is when you're a pharmacy student, live like a student and don't take out every loan that you possibly can, because you will be allowed to take out more than you will need, most likely. Live like a student while you're in pharmacy school. Now here's your extra advice. Live like a student just 2 years after you graduate, and you're going to be able to pay that stuff off pretty quickly. So that's, you didn't ask for motherly advice, but I gave it to you because I'm one.
This year at Pacific, the tuition is just under $44,000 per year. We do recommend that you get your FAFSA information in as soon after January 1st as possible. We do have scholarships available, but most of our students are taking out loans for their living. Portland, the school is actually in Hillsborough, which is a western suburb of Portland, which is certainly not as expensive as maybe California. It might be a little more expensive than Arkansas. So it's somewhere,
trailer parks.
somewhere sort of in the middle. Just keep in mind that if you're at Pacific as well, you're in a 3-year program, so you have not only 1 year less of tuition, but 1 year more of earning your salary. So just remember that in your equation.
So at Keck Graduate Institute, our annual tuition is pretty comparable to the private schools in California. We're at $43,500 per year. And our students are eligible to apply for federal and private loans. In addition to that, I would invite you to follow us on our Twitter page under KGI School of Pharmacy, because that's where we're going to be posting all of our scholarship updates, etc. The city of Claremont is a really lovely place to live. It's, like I said, 35 miles east of LA, but it's very, it's a college town, so it's very walkable, and it's basically college students that live there. And so we're actually having a visit day on October 26th, so please come and visit. I think you would really enjoy the community.
Very similar, out-of-state tuition, and I do not think I'm probably talking to any Alabama residents today. So out-of-state tuition is $35,000 per year. Living cost, very low, typical college town where the university is larger than the community in which it resides. Scholarships, very limited, $5,000 per year is the typical amount that is awarded toward the $35,000 which I gave. And this is a broken record. It's going to be based upon GPA, PCAT scores, as well as your interview score. I would just like to echo what Carol said. I have seen so many of our students be very serious about paying their loans back. 90% of our students who are in school at Auburn are under some type of loan, and those are taking the challenge to pay it back, in 2 years by living meagerly, and which just means you put off the new car, you put off the new condo, or maybe the super vacation that you feel you deserve until those loans are paid off.
Thank you. And this will be our last question, and if we have time at the end, we'll open up to the audience. Starting from Mr. Woosley, do you have any advice to students who do not get into pharmacy schools?
Great question. That happens more frequently than not. What we do is this. If you have been denied, then certainly one of the questions on Pharmcast, have you been denied from a previous pharmacy school? And what have you done to better yourself? Here's how we approach it. If you go through our interview process and you are not admitted, you are allowed to sit down with, usually it is me, to sit down with me, and I will review with you exactly what the committee said you could do to better yourself. It's multifactorial usually. Sometimes it is going to be GPA, that we've just got to see more academic work. It might be another PCAT. Many times it's interview skills. Sometimes you've gotten all the way through the process and forgotten to job shadow or work and make certain that this is the career you want. So you have that opportunity, but whatever has been identified from the prospective school that denied you, make certain you seek their assistance and then address that critical need. One story just this year, I know of an applicant who's coming back. I met with them a month ago. I asked them about their academic work. Well, I only took one course and I made a D. Well, that was one of the criterion. Well, tell me about you're working in a pharmacy. Well, you know, I didn't have time this year to work in the pharmacy because I needed to work to make money. I understand that. However, 2 of the 3 criteria which we gave this particular person to do did not do. So you decide. What do you think the chances of that person being admitted this year will be?
Well, I think it would vary from school to school, but for our school, if you retake a class, then we will go with that higher grade if you get a higher grade. Definitely, you know, if you didn't have time to shadow or get some exposure before, go back and get that exposure. And then the final thing I would say is cast a wider net. So you may have this kind of zoned in list of schools, and I have to, you know, one of these 3 schools, and you know what? There may be a school out there that you haven't looked at that might be the perfect fit for you. So I would definitely say to cast your net a little wider.
Similar to Auburn, if you're not accepted at Pacific and you reapply, you can set up an appointment with Kieran Bennett, who is our admissions director, and she will go through what it is from your application or your interview that you can improve upon. And we would recommend that you do this early. Don't wait until May of next year because the admission cycle is just around the corner. So take the steps to work on the things that you need to improve upon, and that will be looked upon very highly as long as you're making those improvements.
It's disappointing if you don't get in that first year, but it is a sign of maturity if you will do some personal reflection and self-assessment. Ask the person, as these guys have already said. I do a lot of reapplicant advising, but I don't want to do it when we're in that application cycle. It needs to happen earlier. It just needs to happen earlier. Probably the best advice is to just do something different. Don't give the same application, the same references, the same everything that you did last year. There's a reason that didn't work, so make it different. But listen to others, and make those modifications. Do more interview training. If it's communication skills, practice. If there are things that your advisor tells you that you should do, well, you better do them, or it just won't help you the next year. But it's not the end of the world if you don't get in. A lot of people don't get in their first year, but do make it the second year because they listen, they self-assess, and they modify, and they improve.
It's, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. You know, a fly a plane, you can have 2 sides of a wing. You work on your weaknesses. If you don't get in the first time, we will talk to you. I mean, you can call us and ask us, you know, why, and we can point you in the right direction. Maybe it was the GPA, maybe it was the, you know, the interview, maybe it was the writing. So, you know, those are the 3 main criteria why we would admit a student. And so now for us, it could be one of those, you know, one of those 3, right? Either the GPA, in the interview, which you can experience in leadership, and the 3rd is the writing. Now for the GPA, there's lots of different categories, but we have what you call the Pharm.D, of course, and then USC Supplemental. On the UC Supplemental, you can repeat any of the courses, the science courses, any of the courses, and we will take the higher grade if it's repeated. That's a separate GPA category. That means we don't calculate the lower grade. Now, in Pharm.D, because it's accurate history of academic performance, all your grades will be there. So the A and the C that you obtained will average out to a B, right? But on the UC Supplemental, which is a math and science prerequisite GPA, that's a separate category on our spreadsheet of an Excel. We have an Excel spreadsheet, we got all the columns there, and one of them is a math and science prerequisite GPA. That could be lifted, can be raised if you repeat, the course. You don't want to repeat course more than 2 times. That would not, look good. But if you repeat it again, for us, that's mastery of the subject. It's a good thing. Second thing, don't put all your eggs in one basket, like as my colleagues were saying. Don't apply just at a few chosen schools. I always tell students, I meet students all the time. That's our job. We love students, and a lot of students will choose a particular school, choose schools. Well, I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you get an offer at UCSF, take it. If you get an offer at different schools and they accept you, I would really strongly consider in doing that. Don't wait sometimes, for that, for the other school to say yes. The goal here is to become a successful pharmacist, and as much as as we love, we want to train you here at our schools, and at the end of your life, it's going to be who you are, and what Dr. Mosley was talking about earlier about character. And sure, the academics is very important, but becoming a successful pharmacist is the goal. The school is a means towards that.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. So now we will be opening up the questions to the audience. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and speak clearly so I can repeat it to our panelists. Yes.
What advice would you give for supplemental essays, or if all that you see?
So the question is, what advice would you give for supplemental essays?
I would just say that the supplemental essay is where you can be school-specific. We want to know if you're a good fit for us, and so it's okay. We're the only school that's going to see that, so you can do that there. You need to demonstrate that you know a little bit about our school. That doesn't mean you copy and paste things from our website. We can recognize that. That's an obvious thing, I know, but those are just a couple of things. Others?
Yeah, I would agree. Just make it personal. It is your opportunity to really tell us what it is about you that sets you apart from other people. Cutting and pasting from other applications, believe it or not, happens. We'll see references to other schools in the supplemental. That's usually not a good thing. We'll catch that.
So for us, you actually apply directly to pharmacy.kgi.edu for the main application, and that is where you talk about, do you want to be a pharmacist? And then in the supplemental, yes, you would be definitely more school-specific. And if you've had a chance to either speak with someone from the school or attend a visitation day or a presentation, then that will really help you get a better idea of what the school is about.
Really nothing new to add. Just be as specific as you can. In our case, we want you to be succinct. We don't expect to see the PharmCast essay, duplicated again. Just give us an executive summary on that one of why you want to be a pharmacist. But again, elaborate a little bit on why you think you're a good fit, in our case, for Auburn.
Yes, it's just to, be specific and unique. Describe why you want to become a pharmacist. Not that someone else wants you to become a pharmacist, but why you want to become a pharmacist. Describe the evolution of that process to make that decision and becoming that. And it's your story, and so you want to make it personal.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Is there any importance on, for out-of-state students to stay in that state when they're done with school?
So the question is there any importance for out-of-state students to stay in that state when they're finished with school?
No. What I tell students is this. We like to see as many students as we can get from out of state. We think that gives us a more diverse student body, and it does. But you may find you like Alabama, and you may find you want to come back to California, or you may have your eye on Colorado. My advice to students at that time, though, is this. Take the respective boards in each state, usually that's the law exam in addition to the NAPLEX, to which you might be interested, because everything is still fresh on your mind from that perspective. But certainly has no bearing, and we're under no obligation to produce a certain number of graduates for our state.
Yeah, we're a private institution, so our tuition is the same for everyone. We look at our applicant pool equally. Certainly in a state that you're in pharmacy school, you're going to have a wider network there of pharmacists in the community, from state meetings, from from all of your interactions during school. But many people are going on to residencies and they're casting a wide residency net, so that often sends them to distant places anyway. So there's no real pressure. We want you to go where you're going to be happy and a good fit as a pharmacist.
One thing that we'll do for our students who are from out of state, and we're about 60% from out of state, is that when they do those fourth-year APPEs or their rotations, we'll contract with preceptors in the area where they want to work. And so that is very, very helpful. It turns into a month-long job interview is what it happens. But we love out-of-state students.
I agree with all my colleagues here. We accept students, anywhere in the United States. We admit more students from California just because of students tend to stay. Like if someone from Florida, for example, applied at our school, there'd probably be probably 60%, 70% chance that they would stay in Florida, just because regionally the support structure is there and everything's there. So it's not that we don't want any more students. We're actually looking for more diversity as far as in every which way, from every state of the United States. But the majority of our students come from California.
And our school is also a private institution, so we don't, there's no difference for the in-state or the out-of-state. But just me personally, I've lived on the East Coast, I've lived in Texas and California, and my biggest advice to you is just definitely visit wherever you're thinking about applying for, professionally, to see if you can kind of adapt to that environment.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes.
I'm not really sure exactly how residency applications work and stuff, but I'm just wondering, based off the pass, no pass, how that's different from letter grade, how does that factor in?
Do you want to repeat it?
So the question is questions about residency and how pass, no pass in your curriculum affect your grade.
We've certainly come across that with our students who are applying to residencies. We've created a nice document for our students to share with residency programs and actually submit with their transcripts when they apply for residency that sort of describes our program, explains how we assess our competencies and what it means to graduate from our program. And with the exception of a very, very small number of residency programs, most residency programs accept our students' applications. If they have an equation, they have some internal GPA that they might insert to their equation. But we've had very good success. We had almost 20% of our students from last year's class get residency programs this year, so right around the national average, I would say.
Would anybody like to add to that? Okay, so we can take on another question. Yes. So the question is, in terms of grades, is a C or below adequate? And would you have to take your classes before or after applying?
Talk about prerequisites?
For prerequisites.
Well, I think for most programs, you have to have at least a C or better to count it as a prerequisite. I may be wrong, but I would assume that's true. So you need that.
And just to add to that, find out, again, know the school. USC drops your lowest grade. Auburn will never, ever drop a grade. So if you've ever made a D or an F and you take it over and over again, we're going to just keep compounding. And you guys are smart enough to know what that does to a GPA from that perspective. So know what those requirements are at the respective school. But I think we're all different, all of the same accord. C and above are required.
Okay, to clarify, we just not going to just drop the grade. Pharmcast is an accurate history of your academic performance. So we have everything, of course, because we have your transcripts. But we do believe in mastery over a subject. So on your math and science courses, if you got we've had some students that have gotten B, for example, in organic chemistry and took it again and got an A. For us, that tells us that they want to do better. And so that's a positive for us. It's a good thing. Now, if you're repeating courses, throughout your, freshman, sophomore, junior, that becomes a concern, right? But we often run into some students, for example, that got a C, didn't do well, and they want to do better, and they get, they take 2 courses you know, I'm just choosing organic chemistry because I know all you guys, that's a tough course, right? but organic chemistry, for example, you can repeat that, you know, and so we do, that's something that we do. Now, as far as the timeline, you asked the question if it was where it was before. Yeah, it'd have to be, of course, done before you start school. Did I hear you correctly? Yeah.
Does anybody want to add to that? No? Okay, so we can move on to our next question. Yes.
I know a lot of institutions put a high emphasis on getting a recommendation letter from a particular pharmacist, but due to the nature of the field and the legalities involved, it makes it very difficult for a student to actually go in and be able to volunteer and shadow and gain that experience that you guys are looking for in these reference letters from a particular pharmacist. How do you, as a student, overcome that particular obstacle?
So the question is, how do you as a student obtain, how do you as a student pass that obstacle of asking for a letter of recommendation?
I'd like to answer that. One of the things that I know I completely understand, I know your students are having difficulty. Let me show you, can you show me a raise of hands of how many are looking right now for gaining experience? How many it's been really tough? So there's a lot of hands. What I would suggest, and we could talk about, you know, strategically how to do this. Come and see me because I have ideas on how to do that. But we've admitted students, for example, a girl that was volunteering in a hospital in intensive care, right? And we want to see exposure to the healthcare field. That necessarily doesn't mean that it has to be in pharmacy. You know, you're not a pharmacist. That's why you're going to school to become a pharmacist, right? So, for example, if you shadowed a nurse, for example, and I know my own personal experience with my own family, a lot of loved ones who are in the hospital, what do nurses talk about all the time? But drugs, you know, medicine. And an interviewer can say, well, why did you shadow a nurse? Because, you know, playing the devil's advocate, then you should become a nurse, right? No, that really opened the door for me wanting to become a pharmacist because everything what she talked about was medicine, tweaking, you know, lower dosage of this, higher of that, percentage of this, percentage of that. And so there's lots of ways, creative ways to get experience. I would recommend independent pharmacies as well, not the chains, you know, of course, go after everything, but clinics, hospital, also the volunteer experience as well. Again, I have ideas we could talk about, but don't think it's just absolutely, you know, you have to be behind, you know, a counter in a pharmacy.
Would anyone like to add to that?
You know, I would like to just piggyback onto that. Come see me or contact me, and then we can discuss. I know how hard it is. You know, from my pharmacy experience, you had to be a technician. Hospital required you to pass a HIPAA compliance test, and sometimes that still didn't work out. From our perspective, we're looking at character. So when I go to the pharmacist reference letter, I want to see what he or she says about your character. So when you come and contact me, I'll say, well, with whom have you worked for a period of time that can attest to your character or to your abilities or to your capabilities? Or with whom have you volunteered? So as long as we can identify that person from our perspective, you know, we'll accept that.
I just add too, work on building a relationship with a pharmacist. Don't just send out emails or stop in and say, hey, can I come shadow? Ask a pharmacist, could I come and interview you? Just talk about what you do every day. It doesn't have to be in the pharmacy. Maybe do that once or twice, and all of a sudden that pharmacist might work a little harder to try to get you in. And I would agree an independent route might be an easier way to get into a pharmacy. There may be less restrictions from an independent pharmacy than a bigger company or a hospital.
Those are good answers.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
I'm a college counselor at community college. How do you look at students who either started community college and then transferred to a four-year when looking at prerequisites? Do you prefer that they do some of both? Would it be okay for them to do them all at the community college before transferring? And if they're not going into a science major, should that also take that into consideration?
So the question is regarding to community college. Would you consider taking in prerequisites from a little bit of both community college and for university, or all of community for all of the requirements from a community college?
I know for KGI, we don't differentiate, so it's fine if the prerequisites are from a community college or a university. As long as it's regionally accredited, that works for us.
We do not either have any criteria for that. Many of our students from the area or from California, from the area where we get many students, we tend to know many of the programs that they might have done their credits at, so our admissions directors are very in tune to. That's a decent program, that's a strong program. But we don't have any criteria in terms of not accepting a certain amount of community college credits.
We're the same. We understand that it costs less to go to a community college, and we appreciate a student's good stewardship. And so as long as it is accredited, we will take those credits the same.
Yeah, for us, we don't, again, I think we all agree that we don't, I would say, discriminate. So what we find often is that we'll find a student, for instance, that's lacking like 2 or 3 we call IPs, in progress courses. Most of them are done, a lot of times they're done at community college because they just can't find it anywhere else. It's a really, right now, for instance, our own state, a lot of the state universities are cutting down on labs and things, so it's a big struggle, and we understand that. So we will accept a community college course. Now, however, we have found that there is, without sounding biased or a preference of community college and universities, that students that take upper division courses, for example, universities do better than those who are at a community college. That's not absolutely true in each case. There are some courses that are taught at a community college that are actually better than some state universities as well. There is no really single. We're looking at the overall picture. That again, someone can walk in from Stanford with a 4.0, what have you, and blow it on the interview, and we've had that happen. And here's a student who's had, half of his math and science prerequisite course at a community college. It might not have a high as GP, it may have like a 3.2 or something, and be admitted. Because why? Because the way they articulated their interview very clearly. They were not scrambling around in the interview. They had the experienced leadership we wanted. They did real well in the writing test. This is not just one single factor. And so we of course, accept, a community college course. Absolutely.
We do as well, but certainly in order to be admitted to our program, the 3rd year has to be done at an upper division just due to the courses that we require. And this is what we weigh more heavily. Typically in a community college student, we see that they have stayed at home, gone to school, done well, but now they have moved to a 4-year institution, so they're going through that transition of becoming independent, and then 2, we want to see how they handle that academic workload that first semester. So we will weigh that semester very heavily.
The only other thing I wanted to add for KGI is that we do definitely accept the community college credits, but we do require the bachelor's degree prior to matriculation, so just, students need to make sure and have that done.
Thank you. And is there any other questions for the panelists? Yes. So the question is it hard for international students to apply for pharmacy school?
The eligibility requirements is, yes, you need to have United States citizenship or residency in the United States, because of our program is really impacted. That's for the Pharm.D program. However, all of our PhD programs, master's programs, accept international students. And by the way, we jumped from NIH from number 17 to number 2, and we got a presidential award from President Obama on one of our research programs. And so it's look at all the areas as well. If you're gonna looking at our school.
We have students who are, we have international students each year who are in the States on an F1 visa. We do require, though, that their prerequisites all be completed within the United States, but we still will accept an international student.
As do we. We have found that they do have trouble sometimes getting loans, at least in the United States, so that can sometimes be a barrier. But we have an international office that assists all of our international students and can help them in the process.
Our admission requirement is for students to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, but we also have a Master of Bioscience program at our institution that's very connected with our Pharm.D students, and they have a lot of really good internships in pharmaceutical companies and et cetera. So that's another avenue at KGI.
We're the same as Harding and Pacific. The international office for the university, if you're admitted to Auburn University as an international student, you know, that would not preclude you at all. Then you would have no problem being admitted to the School of Pharmacy.
Okay, we have one last time for one last question. Yes.
Ideally, what are you looking for in a pharmacy school applicant?
So the question is, ideally, what would you be looking for in a pharmacy applicant?
4.0, 99 on the PCAT, 28 on the interview score.
And I would add to that, that would be ideal. And we've talked a lot about criteria today, about, you need to do this, you need to have this on your resume or your CV. In the interview, don't be afraid to be yourself as well, because there's lots of room in pharmacy school for individuals. So don't come in and try to be someone you're not, because that will be very, very visible in an interview day. So do the academics we've talked about, do the things, getting experience, but also be yourself, because we want individuals as well.
Okay, so that concludes our second admissions panel. If you have any other questions.